So, thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And of course, as always, I am your humble host, Niko House. So, today I wanted to go over the details, or not the details, but the implications of the resolution. Because when you say Tulsi's name in any video, or even Bernie for that matter, but in this particular case, Tulsi, everybody likes to make the video about Tulsi specifically rather than what the actual conversation should be about, which is the implications of anything that is done. I've noticed a lot of virtue signaling. I've noticed a lot of gaslighting. I've noticed a lot of I've seen a lot of comments that don't actually address the substance and what it means practically, what this legislation being passed or even not passed means practically. One, this is not the Senate bill. The Senate bill actually, well, I don't think it bans BDS, but it gave the states the right to ban BDS, which is still problematic as hell. This bill isn't that, and even if it wasn't that bill, or even if it was that bill didn't get passed. That bill had no chance in hell of getting passed in the Senate that was dominated by Republicans, or that is dominated by Republicans. This bill isn't, or this resolution is not that. Is this resolution written at least half or mostly by AIPAC? Yeah, I would probably agree with that, 100%. Did Bibi Netanyahu cheer on its passage? Yeah, but that's what Bibi does. Bibi, anything that makes it look like a symbolic victory for him, that's what he does. Trump was pretending like he's been getting stuff done for the last 4 years when he had to make concession after concession after concession after major concession over and over and over again. He also takes credit for kids in cages that he didn't really start putting in there. He got that from Obama, but he takes credit for that too. Like, demagogues take credit for everything and anything they can, and they will play victim in any situation and any time they can. So yes, Bibi took credit for it. What does Bibi taking credit for it mean practically? If anybody can answer me that question, I will be thoroughly surprised. A lot of people have been, like I said, there's a lot of gaslighting, a lot of virtue signaling, but we're not talking about that. Me and my friends that I grew up with, we got a phrase that we like saying. It's, are we going to talk about real shit or are we talking about rhymes? In other words, are we going to talk about practicality? Are we going to talk about real life implications? Or are we going to talk about all the fluffy, emotional, oh my God, I hate it so much, and actually not talk about what it means to the everyday person or to the working class, or in this specific case, to the BDS movement? What is it? What does all this mean? Well, in case some of you haven't been paying attention, there have been a lot of states that have actually tried to ban BDS, try to make it criminally punishable to engage in BDS. Now, in some situations, the judges have ruled against the state, but that's only in some situations where the judges have some common sense. That's not in all situations. In a lot of those states, people forget, what did the Democrats do? The Democrats helped fast track a bunch of Trump's pro-Israel, anti-Palestine federal judges. People forget this. So, whereas there are a couple of judges who have done the right thing, that is not going to be the case in every situation. There are going to be other federal judges that are going to have to engage in this. And eventually, it is highly likely that the Supreme Court is going to have to engage in this. And it would probably be helpful if they had some sort of precedence set by another one of the checks and balances. We know that the Supreme Court is dominated by Trump's people. That's one balance or one check that is probably going to be really unbalanced. We know that Trump is anti-BDS, another check that sends everything out of balance. So this is where shit gets tricky, because practically, or no, not practically, symbolically, the Congress says they condemn BDS. Question: Does condemning BDS stop BDS from occurring? If you participated in BDS right now, could you be criminally liable for participating in BDS? Because U.S. House of Representatives pulled a Senator Warren and wagged their finger at you. No, we don't like that. That's fine. They cannot like it. Guess what? When the government likes your protest, if put it like this, if the U.S. House of Representatives actually advocated for BDS, in all seriousness, you should probably start being worried, because it means that it's not working. Because the U.S. House of Representatives never openly pushes for any policy that would result in substantive change and structural change. They would never push for efficacious legislation. It would never happen. Let's be honest, right? So the moment that they agree with you, you should probably start being worried, because that's what history has told us. So practically speaking, what exactly has been banned because of this legislation? Practically. Not what your emotions are telling you, not what Twitter is telling you, but what has been banned. Nothing. Nothing has been banned. The U.S. government is paid by AIPAC and sides with AIPAC as far as BDS, as far as condemning it, not banning it. That's not news to us. We already know how that game goes. Now, there's the other part of the legislation that people constantly ignoring, like it doesn't mean anything. The other part of the legislation is the part where it says very clearly, multiple times, in the resolve section and in the in the whereas section and in the resolve section, that, yeah, I mean, we don't like it, but Americans do have the right to protest a foreign government. Now, what does that mean practically? It means practically the House nor the Senate, because of the bullshit bills that got pushed through before this. Not saying that this one isn't bullshit, but the other ones were far worse, and they were bills, and they were trying to hold people criminally liable for participating in BDS. It means that before, there was no precedence that was set by the House of Representatives or the Senate that stopped states from participating in punishing people for participating in anti-BDS. Or for participating in the BDS movement. Before, there was no precedent. It was left up to the states, and the states were going to one state was going to be okay with it, the next state wasn't. One state was going to be okay with it, the next state wasn't. This isn't that anymore. This is the U.S. House of Representatives putting a resolution on wax, as we like to say, on paper that said, okay, look, we may not like it, but they have the right to do this. So it satisfies AIPAC because they get their little BS symbolic victory. It satisfies Netanyahu. Well, I don't even say it satisfies him, but he's going to pretend like it does. You can say it's an AIPAC resolution, and that would probably be true. But the other resolutions or bills that they tried to get passed, they failed, and there's a reason that those failed. Because they were trying to ban BDS. They were trying to outlaw BDS. So once again, let's get away from the symbolic, because we don't have to debate whether or not symbolically it looks bad for Palestine. Symbolically, it does look bad for Palestine. Symbolically, it makes it look like Israel got a victory. Symbolically, it looks like Congress people voted against Palestine. Symbolically. And of course, symbolism does matter. But let's talk about practically. Practically, we finally got legislation that asserts, when we're specifically talking about BDS, and the states that have been trying to ban it or make it unlawful, we finally have legislation that actually protects the First Amendment right to participate in BDS. Fuck whether or not the government doesn't like it. We don't care if the government doesn't like it. We know the government doesn't like it. Thanks for the super chat, mate. Trump is owned by the Likud party of Israel, not Russia. Right-wing Israel, who is Epstein and Ryan Cohen worked for, the Zionist mafia. Fact. That's probably true. That's probably true. Definitely about Trump being owned by Israel. So at the end of the day, people are going to virtue signal whichever way they've already committed to virtue signaling, right? If they want to talk about the emotional implications of all this stuff and what it symbolically means, what has changed in a negative way, right? In a negative way, what has changed? Did we already not know that the government is in the pockets of AIPAC? That's already been a thing. We already knew because we've been fighting over it, or we've been arguing with the government about it for the last, really it got ramped up over the last 6 months, the conversation when the states tried to ban BDS. So we've already known that the government doesn't like BDS. Why? Because they're in AIPAC's pocket. That's all well and good. We already know, for example, our government does not like Medicare for all. They're going to fight tooth and nail for it. Right now, Medicare for all, Bernie's bill, does have a private component to it. And people like to ignore that. So are we going to focus instead on the private component of that bill, which actually potentially, we don't know. It could end up having negative implications. We don't know this. Or are we going to focus on the good, the overall good, the practical good that Medicare for all brings? That universal health care brings. Because which by the way, of course people won't focus on. People thought that Bernie was banning private health care out of his Medicare for all bill. So no, people are kind of delusional when it comes to protecting Bernie sometimes. Because there is private component, but everybody thought there wasn't. Which was weird because it's right there in plain writing once again. But nobody wants to focus on the private. Why? Because we care more about the public, the public part where everybody is benefited. So, what do you care about more? That's what it comes down to. Do you care about actually being able to participate in your activism, that is the BDS movement, and having that protection under the First Amendment, and knowing that the government is, even though they don't like what you're doing, they are still going to stand up for your First Amendment right? Because the U.S. House and the Senate have had chances to kill that. And they didn't. They opted out of doing that. And they could have done that. But instead, they said, look, we'll let everybody know where we stand. We don't like BDS, but they have the right to participate in it. So practically speaking, BDS won. Because you're still able to participate in BDS today, and you are now protected by the federal government in doing so. Which means you can still be effective in harming Israel's economy all you want to pressure them to remove themselves from the settlements in Palestine. Did I get a super chat that I missed? I think I responded to this one. That was from... Yeah, okay, no, we're good. Just want to make sure. So, that's what it comes down to. Oh, Manny, I missed your super chat. I'm glad somebody saw. I saw Manny's name. I know he gives a lot of super chats, so I appreciate you saying that. Manny, for some reason, it didn't show up in my notification that you sent a super chat. So I'm sorry if I'm reading this late. Do you know Tulsi's position on Ilhan Omar's resolution HR 496? I wonder because that solved much of where she really stands on this issue. Yeah, actually, and it's funny because I mentioned that the other day. For all of, not even just Tulsi, but for all of them, for everybody who voted against this, but specifically the progressives, my concern for any of them in the way they may vote one way or the other will be that resolution. Because Ilhan's is very straightforward, cut and dry, reaffirmation of the First Amendment, reaffirmation of the right to protest foreign governments. And so if they vote no for that, then we got to be worried. Everybody has to be. That's problematic. Because think about it like this. If that bill gets pushed through and everybody votes against it, right? If they vote to condemn it, because that bill came after this, I think Elon's passing a resolution, not a bill. But because that resolution got introduced after this one, that resolution would set the precedent. So if that resolution failed for whatever reason, it would cancel out anything positive about the First Amendment and the right to protest in HR 246 or the Anti-BDS resolution. So that would be problematic. Also, I do believe that if Elon would have introduced her bill first, and I'm sure that they didn't want her to introduce her bill first, because it would have made this resolution specifically redundant. Because all they would have had to put in this resolution is anti-BDS stuff, and that wouldn't have worked. It would have just been a condemnation straight through and through of BDS. And I don't think that would have gotten passed. But Elon had a first, I don't find it coincidental. We've seen people's good legislation get co-opted before, right? They co-opted Tulsi's, and they co-opted and introduced Tulsi's election integrity legislation before Tulsi could do it. They did the same thing with Elon. I remember I did the video the other day. She was doing a video, or she was introducing legislation to assert a First Amendment right to participate in BDS. And then this legislation comes out and gets voted on before. Because they like beating progressives to the punch. But at the end of the day, we can't ignore the practical implications of legislation, like, because our emotions don't want us to wrap our head around the fact that it's things are more complicated than they are, like than they actually is. Like, practical application of the law is not the same thing as how you feel about the law. The practical reality of precedents being set by the federal government is more important than how you feel about this legislation. And now we do have even albeit being written by AIPAC, which nobody's denied. Because that's basically how most legislation in Congress is written. It's usually written by some damn, some lobbyist. But albeit that, yes, they got their symbolic victories. But do you really think because BB, y'all say, BB cheered for it on Twitter. Oh, you think BB was cheering for the fact? It's symbolic. He's cheering because he wants to make it look like he was victorious. He wants to make it look like it. But BB is still undergoing the BDS movement. Israel's still being held accountable by the people participating in the BDS movement. So why are you he tweeted that to make it look like he's beating you. That's literally what Trump does. Every time he actually fails at something, when he thought it looked like a victory, he tried to celebrate these nonsensical, symbolic victories that aren't even really symbolic victories for him. And they damn sure aren't practical. Remember, we're getting our wall. Hey, Trump supporters, where your wall at? Y'all not even gonna be able to finish the damn wall because y'all can't get the money for it. And if you do get money, it's like little cents and little cents here and there to keep Trump happy. But let's not confuse someone gaslighting y'all on Twitter like Netanyahu did. If think about it, if Netanyahu, if BDS is doing what people are saying it's doing, which is putting pressure on Israel, which it probably is, which is why AIPAC went out of their way to try and write these legislations, then people pretend like they're winning all the time. That's politics. But who gets to keep participating in their BDS movement? who's going to continue being the subject of the BDS movement until he pulls Israel out of the settlements and starts treating Palestinians with dignity. Oh, okay. That's what I thought. So, Manny, thanks for the super chat. What would you do, hypothetically speaking, if Tulsi doesn't sign HR Res 496? I'll be honest, that is a vote I'm slightly worried for. If she doesn't sign it, I'll call her out for it. I mean, but I doubt she wouldn't sign that. Hopefully she's there for it. That's what I would want to make sure she's there. That's what I'm more concerned about, is her being there. But yeah, I would assume, because Tulsi is really big on the First Amendment right. To be completely honest with you, I can't speak for everybody else, but for Tulsi, only because I know her, I don't like trying to figure out what's going on in Ro Khanna's head, because Ro be all over the place. But I know, like, just from conversations I've had with Tulsi, her campaign, her videos, and things like that, Tulsi, any legislation that's going to, unless it's going to do something demonstratively horrible, like if it's going to have horrible implications, like measurable, quantitative, tangible implications, Tulsi will vote for the First Amendment every time. That's just how she is. Because that's kind of, I mean, it's very important. Think about when she called out Trump. She's always constantly talking about Trump from the perspective of him trying to infringe on the First Amendment of those who disagree with him. So, let me think. Does anybody have any more questions for me before I get going? Anybody have any questions about the practical application of this resolution? Like what it means in real life, what it means to the lives affected or potentially affected. You said, Silver Surfer, you just said that she's letting Israel and Iran know that. Are you kidding? Bro, she's the only presidential candidate. Well, I don't know how this even got made about Tulsi. Once again, whatever. But she's the only presidential candidate that has consistently called out Israel. And most specifically, Bibi Netanyahu. She's the only one. She's the only one. And guess what? Whenever Trump tried to stop aid from going to Gaza, guess who voted against him? That was Tulsi. She's the only one who has been consistently standing up. But that's a whole different discussion. People are going to say what they say. They're going to say what they want to say. They're going to say whatever they believe is the wave at the time. It is what it is. It is what it is. That's just kind of that's how politics goes from time to time. Tulsi, hell, when Tulsi first announced, she called out Bibi Netanyahu, what, once a week? Damn near? She called out Netanyahu like once a week. In fact, a lot of the people who used to be Trump supporters, who now support Tulsi, jumped on the Tulsi train specifically because they considered Trump a puppet of Israel in Saudi Arabia, and Tulsi called it out. That's why a lot of people jumped on Tulsi's train. So the entire U.S. should be sanctioned. Oh, y'all getting into the debate about sanctions and not sanctions. Whoo, that's a whole different conversation. That's but I mean, just so people, and that's fine. You know, you could see, the thing is, you can think it's a bad vote. That's okay. Like, it's fine. I've already told people I would have abstained. I think that voting yes would have been bad. Why? Because if you vote yes on this, then people are going to ignore everything else, and it's going to look like a symbolic victory for Israel. But here's the other side of that coin. If you vote no and this bill doesn't get passed, you're leaving it up to Trump's federal judges to dictate the outcome of the BDS movement. Do you understand this? I don't think that people are really getting that aspect of this. If you vote no, that means there is no legislation specifically referring to the BDS movement that makes sure that people are protected in their right to participate in that movement. If this bill didn't pass. So if you vote yes, you're there, it's going to be construed as you're supporting Palestine, or excuse me, as you're supporting Israel. If you vote no, then this going to be construed, and especially if it doesn't pass, as, okay, shit, now we're leaving it up to the states to decide whether or not people can participate in BDS, and that's not right. Which is why AIPAC wrote the damn legislation the way they did. I would have personally abstained, and then I would have voted for Elon's legislation. But here's the catch-22 with that. This is Elon. Do we even know if the House will let Elon's legislation get to the floor without them trying to pretend it's redundant because HR 246 already got voted on? These are things that need to be considered when we're having... Hold up, what? Wooly. No, Niko, you're not getting it. If you vote against condemning a free speech movement, that's not right? Huh? If you vote against condemning a free speech... I don't get that. But yeah, anyway, that's what people don't get. Legislation, resolutions, bills, laws, how they all interact with each other, like the real practical application. So what's the process of the resolution after this? I think that's where the concern should be. Hagos, I think that's is it either Jagos or Hagos? I actually explained that in the beginning of the video, but I'll do a quick synopsis once again. So if you want to call it a symbolic victory for Bibi Netanyahu in AIPAC in Israel, then you can say that, yes. So that's it for them. That's where that stops. Okay? Now on the other side of that, this legislation will now be used as precedence when it comes to states trying to clamp down or outlaw on the BDS movement. So what does this mean practically? It means that Bibi Netanyahu can talk shit on Twitter all he wants to, but if BDS wasn't effective, he wouldn't be trying to get AIPAC to pass this legislation. On the other side of that fence, you get to keep participating in BDS. And they can't do anything about it. The states can't do anything about it. Because the federal government has now passed legislation that says, resolved, people have the right to participate in protest of a foreign government by the laws of the Constitution. That's what it says. So, yes, BB got their symbolic victory. However, BDS got an actual victory because they still get to do it. Like I said, I don't know why people are itching to have the government support them in their protests. Let's be real. Once again, if the government likes your protest, it's like how the Democratic Party loved the Women's March. What did the Women's March accomplish? The Women's March didn't have any actual demands. It was just a fuck Trump love fest. But you know what they didn't like? What didn't get coverage? The Women's March on the Pentagon. That's what didn't get covered. So if the government pushes legislation to actually see your movement through, which would be weird in general, but if they push legislation to support your movement, that's because they believe that your movement isn't efficacious and it would be a great distraction from a real solution. But because they are condemning it, right? It's how I think about weed. Why the federal government don't want to legalize weed? Because they know damn well that it's good for you. The FDA tried to Schedule 1 it, or the DEA tried to Schedule 1 it, and the FDA claims that it's the devil's plant because they know damn well it's good for you. Why is the government condemning BDS? Because it's probably working. But their condemnation of BDS does not in any way, I don't give a damn what anybody's telling you, because there are people who could probably go to jail right now over BDS. So let's be clear about that. It's not in any way more, it is not heavier or does not hold more weight than actually being able to continue to participate in BDS without having to worry about federal prosecution. period. Dan Campbell, yikes, I almost skipped the ads. We need a reasonable, short explanation for those who already are ready to jump ship. I'm in it for Tulsi till the end. Well, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm definitely still for Tulsi. Don't get it twisted. But this video specifically was addressing the legislation because, like I said, and I said this in the beginning of the video in case you all are just now tuning in, I said, well, the fact of the matter is, the moment people hear Tulsi's name included in anything, they like to make it about Tulsi instead of what does it mean practically for our lives, because it could just be the presidential hype, right? Everybody's concerned about what does this mean they'll do? What does this mean they'll do? Well, once again, if you look at Tulsi's record over the last 2 years on Israel and Palestine, it's actually been stellar. Constantly blocking or trying to block Trump's attempts to basically punch down on Palestine. But so that people can understand what this means for them, this video was to explain what this means practically, what this means at the state level, what this means for Israel, what this means for Palestine, and what it will look like. Because everybody just keeps virtue signaling. Everybody keeps talking about, nonsense. Like, I feel this way about something. Sam Bass, did you just ask me if I support the apartheid state of Israel? Remove yourself from this chat. You sound like a fucking moron. That's a dumbass question. Like, that's stupid. Y'all TYT people need to hop on up out of here. It's funny how you keep calling it legislation. It's a resolution. I don't know what you want me to call it. Legislation is synonymous with resolution and bill. So, yeah. Anyway. So the moral of the story is practically speaking, who gets to continue their movement and who will continue being hurt by that movement. BDS gets to continue their movement. Israel will continue to be hurt by that movement. BDS wins. And that's like, if you want to argue with that, I don't know how you're going to argue the facts of that. BDS wins. So what's the problem? What do you want? Do you really think, like I said, if AIPAC had to write this legislation, it probably means that BB's been feeling the heat from BDS. The same heat that he will now continue to feel from BDS. Think about that. Kim Iverson has a very informative video on... Yeah, they said that earlier. What I find interesting, as a side note, is the constant assertion that explanation... We got to get out of this, like... I feel like people... When facts don't vibe with our initial emotion, I feel like people are to as gaslighting. They either reject the facts, they move the goalposts, they say, well, the pro-Palestinian movement hates this. Well, that's kind of actually not smart, because this resolution asserted that BDS shall continue, and I thought that's what we wanted, right? If this whole thing is about BDS, what does this mean for BDS? BDS can continue. BDS will continue, and they can't be punished for it. That's a victory. But people see words, and if their emotions, which once again, this is what the goal of AIPAC rightness was. Why did BB gets to pretend like he did something and he didn't win shit? But it looks like he won something. Just like Trump pretended like he was victorious in his wall funding. Well, actually, this trade agreements have we pulled out of. He said he's going to pull out of NATO. He's supposed to pull out of NAFTA, whatever. We're going to restructure it so it's more fair, et cetera, et cetera. None of that stuff happened. But he gets to pretend like it happened all the time with symbolic victories. Symbolic victories, like, I wish I could eat symbolic victories. Like, I wish symbolic victories Like, can I symbolically pay my medical bills? Can I symbolically put food on my table? Can I go work at my symbolic job? What do you think people who participate in BDS would rather do? Participate in it symbolically without being punished, or participate in it actually without being punished? So when people hear Tulsi's name, I'm just saying, I'm referring to my video the other day. They hear they ignored Rokana and Presley for the most part. They hear Tulsi's name, not read it, because their arguments that they were trying to make for it didn't make any sense if you read the resolution. They kept calling it the anti-free speech bill, or which, one, it's not a bill. Two, it's not anti-free speech. It's actually the opposite of that. You can condemn something like, it's like LeBron James. But that's okay. I'm free to not like something. The U.S. government can condemn shit all they want to. You don't have to like it. But are you passing laws to try and stamp out free speech or violate the Constitution? It's like we have a symbolic victory right now where most of the Democrats in Congress pretend like they love marijuana. They love it, right? They have symbolic. I mean, even Kamala is inventing times she smoked marijuana to seem more likable, because symbolically, marijuana has become popular. Except, how many states is marijuana legal in? All the symbolic victories in the world hasn't caused the legislature, the House of Representatives, to pass Tulsi's marijuana bill. So what's the point of having a symbolic victory if federal laws aren't going to follow? You get what I'm saying? Symbolic victories, I'm not saying they have no merit and they hold no weight, but like, if you're going to claim this to be an anti-BDS bill, then you should have the onus put on you to explain exactly how this is stopping BDS from happening. Because nobody can make that argument. This is going to prevent BDS. It's going to prevent people from participating in BDS. Notice that argument hasn't been made. Why? Because it would be a lie. You cannot like the vote. Like I said, I would not have voted for that shit at all. I would have abstained because it was a setup. It was a setup. And they knew it was a setup. And some people actually believe, on the organizing side of the world that I've been talking to, they actually believe it was a setup for Rokana and Tulsi specifically, and potentially AOC. TYT is a symbolic home of the progressives. That and 50 cents would buy a cup of coffee decades ago. Oh man, that's funny. That's funny. I ain't gonna lie. That's funny. But yeah, so symbolic victories, they don't outweigh real life. And that's just facts. If somebody was able to make the argument that BDS was stopped by this resolution, then we can call it an anti-BDS resolution. And we can gaslight and we can get all emotional about it, or we can look at the reality. We're going to talk about real shit, or we're going to talk about rhymes. And I don't got time for the rhymes. We got actual work. We got people who could legitimately be punished before this resolution got passed over BDS by their states. Now they can't. Because what would happen is this resolution would have to be considered for a federal judge if they're going to try and prosecute this. Because that's how checks and balances work. So, thanks for tuning into this live stream segment of Mi Casa Es Casa. I hope that gave you some clarification. I hope that helps people who are trying to kind of like explain what this means in practical terms. I hope this helped. And I will be doing a few videos later on today as well. I think I'm supposed to be doing another live stream tonight. I can't remember, but I'll let you know.